So, Bo Mitchell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, doing well. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. First, I have to tell you, I'm a big Cobra Kai fan. So,
Oh, thank you, thank you. That is awesome. I appreciate the support. That's rad. How long have you been watching? You've been watching it since the first season, or did you get into it later on? Or
first season.
oh, amazing,
In fact, I have a
amazing.
fish
Yeah.
tank full of fish named after the characters. So,
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, that's a new one for me. That's so cool.
so tell me, what's it like to transition from a show like that, where there is a lot of comedy, and to a show like the film like The Line, which is intense.
Yeah, I think they're all kind of one and the same. I feel like comedy and drama are both, different sides of the same coin. Laughter and crying are kind of like the same energy, just at different frequencies. So it's all relative. I feel like once if you can learn to do one, you can learn to kind of do the other. So switching from like a character like Brooks to a character like Mitch, which is who I play on the line, they're obviously drastically different. Brooks is a much more simple character to get into. Whereas Mitch, we spent months doing method work preparing for it, but at the same time, there's still, some of the core aspects are still there. And one of the things for me is always having like always trying to bring a heart to the character in a way where like you're not quite sure of how to take the character when you're an audience member and you're watching it and you're like, I think I hate that character, but I also think I feel bad for that character, or love that character. Just trying to create that thought process and open up those questions.
Right. Did you do a lot of research on fraternities for the movie, or were you part of one?
I did a lot of research. I was never a part of a fraternity. I grew up skateboarding, so we were quite, the culture of skateboarding is quite counter to the fraternity culture. But skateboarding in its own, it does kind of have its, you know, aspects that are similar to a fraternity, where you do have these, like, you can kind of have like a boys' club situation, but obviously, the skateboarding doesn't have a lot of the things that fraternities have, like hazing and rituals and so forth. It's more or less you just create a family unit, create a group of like a brotherhood unit or a fellowship unit, um, despite the genders and all. And so I think that is like really an important thing for me that I brought into this. I knew what that felt like when you had a group of guys that you just felt comfortable with because you had been through stuff with them. So I tried to bring that into it, but really I've never been a part of a fraternity. I grew up in South Carolina, and I was adjacent to that my whole life, and I just have friends and friends of friends that have been through those experiences. So I pulled a lot from those memories, and even I've had a few friends open up to me about some of their experiences. So things like that helped, and trying to just pull all that together is really what we did with Mitch's character to make him real.
Right. I remember, news stories throughout the past of, the hazing issues and things like that. But, even if it's just acting them out, it's got to be rough.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, and it's I think some of those stories is what's inspired us to tell this story. There is a problem out there. This stuff is being taken too far. And think really the situation that we have at hand is that the especially the young kids are being not realizing they have agency, not realizing they have the ability to make a yes or no decision, and ultimately just because something is tradition, they're not questioning it, right? Which that's not what that means. It doesn't mean that you have to not question the tradition or not question what's going on. But then they don't, and then bad things usually happen, right? And I think that that's something, we're trying to point that out on a larger scale. The fraternity aspect is just the lens we're telling the story through. It's a very important niche in our country's culture. I think it's something needs to be talked about. It needs to be worked on. But at the end of the day, I think it is a larger scale problem that we see across all cultures and throughout America.
Right. And there's a lot of addiction and alcoholism in the film as well. And, I appreciate it. It kind of, shines a spotlight on that as an example of how it can be bad, opposed to where, things like the fraternity seem to promote it.
Yeah, it just becomes a way of life. I think it just becomes something that is natural to them. It's a monkey see, monkey do situation. The older kids in the fraternity are doing it. The pledges of the newer blood is being taught to do it. They're being hazed to do it. There are drinking rituals and so forth, and parties are and mixers are a big part of that culture, which I'm all for. Having a good time, and I believe in the power of networking. And that is important. But yeah, it's the alcoholism and the drug addiction and the partying and the party drugs and the abuse of those substances are given an excuse, through those things, right? And that's kind of, again, another dangerous point that we were obviously hoping to put out, as well as just the fact that these developing minds are getting a hold of these substances. 18, 19, even 20 plus year olds. It's definitely, it's proven your brain is still developing up until you're in your mid 20s, and exposing yourself to substances like that, especially repeatedly at high dosages over extended periods of time, are detrimental to your body's functionality. So I definitely am happy we're able to point that out in this, because it is happening.
Right, right. And, just what's it like to play a character that's going through all that?
Yeah, it's a sensitive spot. I think, like I said earlier, I had some friends that really opened up to me. I had one friend in particular. His name is Mike, and he was an amazing guy. He's always going to be remembered as a great son and friend. But he passed away a few months after we finished filming, sadly, and he is definitely a victim of kind of the after effects of fraternity culture, I would say. And we're very sad to have lost him. But he opened up to me about his just harrowing and traumatic experiences that he had throughout his fraternity life. And so, I definitely pulled a ton of that into Mitch's character. So it's a somber place to be, because I'm living through that lens of an old friend that's no longer here. And as well, I feel like I'm also tapping into kind of the darker parts or the worst parts of my own, um, mental processing abilities. When you think about these things and you put yourself in that place and you say it and you do it, in the method work, we were living it 24/7 for a month, and that does weigh on you. It does change your mental processes. It's something that, it's called method work for a reason, because it takes that time and work to get into it, and then it's I think a lot of people don't think about it. The coming out of it is equivalently uh, difficult and time consuming. I remember coming home, and some friends and my wife were there to greet me, kind of as like a little welcome back thing, and they just didn't recognize me. Despite my change of attire, my change of hair, I had that thick Southern accent still, and I was making kind of crude jokes still, and I was just in that. I was still in that mindset, and it was just something where I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, really, this really has absorbed me. And that's the beauty of it. That's when you can get to these points that we were able to reach in the film to tell this story. But that's the hard part on the other side that nobody really talks about.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I know it has to be hard.
Yeah, stuff like that is always difficult. But there's the beauty of life is that things go on. And I also know that he was loved, and he loved many people, and he had an amazing impact while he was here. And so we take that with us. And yeah, I appreciate your concern.
Right, right. And there's, another topic that this movie covers. It's, you know, basically being a sheep and having these people lead you, but making these terrible choices as if you're above the law, like what happens in the film.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That is a great point to make. It's really cool that you were able to kind of pull that out of that, because that is a real thing that happens. This is actually kind of developing right now in the culture, if we're going to hyper focusing on fraternities. But I think the systematic error, this problem echoes out into the greater, I would say, corporate world as well. But which we've seen corporate scandals before, and it's because of these situations that occurred in these places like this. And then the fellows that graduate out of that fraternal situation carry that kind of delusional mindset upwards into their corporate life, and then things become a problem, right? So, but what's happening with some fraternities right now is there's Greek life is banding together and completely separating their entities from campus life. And so they really are creating these little safe havens where now not even the schools can do much about them. And so it is a little worrisome, because you know who knows really what's going on in those houses at night. I mean, to be honest, you see in the movie what we depict, and I would say we gave it a kindergarten approach. That was a PG version, what you got of what is actually occurring in some of these fraternal houses.
It's scary because, like I said, I grew up hearing about some of the things that went on and people that accidentally died or got killed, and it's mind blowing that people think they can still get away with
Yeah, it is so sad. And it's a problem. Again, we depict in the film, there's opportunities for people to take agency, and for people to make these decisions that could alter the landscape of the entire film, but nobody does it. And why does that not happen? And I just hope that it starts conversations like these, where people can think about that. Because I think I'm not a I don't have a kid. Yeah, I'd love to be a parent one day, but I couldn't imagine sending my child off to college, and then a horrible thing happening to them. It doesn't have to be the worst of all, death, but other horrible things happen in these situations. Anywhere from sexual misconduct to permanent, physical, mental damage from, maybe over drinking or being pushed down a set of stairs or what have you. But you send your kid off to college thinking they're going to be safe. You send the kid off to war. You're like, okay, the worst could happen. You send the kid off to college, you think if they're going to go get an education. And it's sad. And I think that there's a reasoning behind that, which we also depict in that there's a gap in in these kids' lives, where they, especially when they're out of the house for the first time, they're washing their own clothes for the first time, they're being an adult, and then they realize, I don't have my mom to hug at night, or I'm not in my bed that I've been in for the past 4 years, in my home, in my town that I've been in for the past life. And like, I now I now am experiencing this dreadful homesickness, right? And those fraternities and even sororities, they kind of sell that to the kids, right? And so that's kind of one of the more, you know whether it's purposeful or not, one of the more evil things I think that are going on is that these kids are being sold on having a family, and then that's being held over their head the whole time as they're being put through hell.
Right. And it's, I would highly recommend to any parent watching this to make their child watch The Line before they go to college as a good example of what not to do.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. I never thought of it like that. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because fraternal life has been depicted in many ways throughout the years in cinema and in the news, and it's usually somewhat of a glorified thing. And I think there could be beauty to it as such depictions, in current in showcase, but it's not. It's often in times not that, and it's more often in times what like something that we showcased in the line. So yeah, I think it could be helpful for people to take a peek at it and just consider what's going on, and talk about it.
Right. And it wasn't, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was last year, I believe. A pledge drank too much and got brain damage, and now he's, you know, and that's something you can't
Yes.
take back just because he was pledging a fraternity.
Yeah, I remember that. We were actually in post production still, I believe, or maybe we were premiering. We were doing a festival run, but I remember actually hearing that news one day on the road, and that's a sombering thing. It's so sad, and it's like this stuff is out there happening, and we are highlighting a niche situation here. This is not happening every day, all the time, at every single fraternity, but it's happening enough to where we've essentially in the past 40 to 50 years we've had one or two hazing accidents a year coming out of fraternities, and that's just a consistent problem because you look at how covered up the ones that even make it out into the news are. Imagine how many just never even made it out into the news, right?
Right. It's scary. And there are some wonderful things that can come from fraternities and sororities, like the connections and the family feel. But that it's not really like that, I don't think. I think that it's, more of a facade, to party and do these bad things and get away with it and get girls and things like that.
Yeah, and I was adjacent to this. I spent a lot of time floating around, when I was at college age, floating around to different college parties, and I was never a part of those fraternal houses and stuff. But I saw enough for myself to know that yeah, it's a place that is, you know, it's definitely twisted from what it should be. I think a little space to explore. That's what college I think is about as well. You explore yourself, you find yourself, you flush out some things, you experiment a little bit. That stuff should all be on the table, but at your own discretion, you know?
Right. Right. There's a line that shouldn't be crossed.
Yeah.
But like I said, the line is it's a very powerful film. It's very heartbreaking and troublesome and sad, but it's definitely something that needs to be discussed. It's one of those movies that could really show people, what might actually, be happening behind these places, and to be
Yeah.
careful when joining them, or a parent sending your kid off to college.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think the just for I know for me particularly what I've discussed with some of the other cast and crew is like we just want people to be having conversations about this. We want people to have the opportunity to talk about it. It's hard to bring stuff like this up. Nobody wants to talk about sad stuff nowadays. There's enough bad things going on in the world, but it's a catalyst to open that conversation, and we've seen it happen firsthand now a few times at some of the Q&As we've done across the country the past month, and it has been very very fulfilling to us to see this kind of happening and it working, and it's taking people on a ride that's making them think, and I think that is at the core what what the average cinema experience should be. It should be a way to tell a story. It should be an artful way to discuss something that maybe is hard to speak about normally, right? So yeah, I'm very proud that we've, you know, the feeling that we are accomplishing that with this.
Right, right. And it's, it's an entertaining movie. I mean, it's not like a happy-go-lucky movie or a scary movie, but it's a good movie. And
Yeah.
it's, it's definitely, like I said, it's important to talk about. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. And I think it's, like I said, it's definitely something that should be seen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really hope that, you know, folks watching this can get a chance to go and take a peek at it. We have a ton of theaters showing it, starting October 25th today, and you know, yeah, go out there and take a peek, get some friends together. It's a ride, like you said. It's hard to put it into words because you there is some humorous parts. You know, we have some comic relief here and there. There it is a suspenseful ride. It's definitely not a horror film, but it is suspenseful. There's some slow burn tension, and I think just at its core, you know, we were able to make it interesting and
Right.
and keep it real, which can be very hard sometimes. And so I'm very, very proud of that and thankful that we were able to do that.
Well, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and it definitely had an effect on me. And I'm hoping that maybe it'll have an effect on those younger people that are going into those situations to make them think about, is this such a great idea, or I don't really have to do this if I don't want to, kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we want to kind of preach here is that, you know, you do have the ability to make your own decisions despite whatever odds are against you. And that's truly the only way you're going to find peace, you know, is kind of following your heart. And when it becomes a problematic situation you're in, it's even more important to follow that and to know, you know, who you are, rather than, you know, kind of be stuck where you feel like you have no agency or you feel like you have no decision making power because you're kind of being guided by, you know, a group think or peer pressure.
Right, right. Definitely, definitely. And I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It was a
Oh, of
very interesting
course.
conversation. I like those.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It's been a blast.
Definitely, definitely. And I can't wait to see, the second half of this season of your show too. So, because I'm like I said, I'm a fan. I even own the Eagle Fang shirt.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm an Eagle fan myself.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
should give you a little bit of an idea, but I can't wait to see what happens for the rest of the season. And, I can't wait to talk to people about the line. I think it's gonna start a lot of conversations.
I appreciate it. Yeah, this has been a blast, and thank you for having me. Definitely check out the new leg of the Cobra Kai season coming out now, and yeah, you can find showings for the line on theline.official.film. That's our crazy little URL, but there are all the theater locations and ticket purchasing options there. So definitely go out, take some friends, and hopefully start a conversation.
Definitely, definitely.